Now that I finally got my camera equipment working well again, it's time to finally take a closer look at the Mayako MX8e and its little features and quirks that make it unique. If you're coming off of the previous video I did about the Mayako experience as a whole, and you're more interested in how Mayako as a brand works, then be sure to check out that video first. If you're more just interested in how the car itself does, well, you're in the right spot. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsors for the channel, RC Trophy Chasers, Leadfinger Racing, Cow RC, and A-Main Hobbies. Anything you guys purchase using the links in the description below will directly support me as well. Starting off with the actual build, like I mentioned in the previous video, the Mayako MX8e's build was very intensive with small washers, shims, and spacers, very tailored towards higher level builders. The closest analog I can compare it to would be the Schumacher class of cars like the LD3 or L1R Cat. Slightly less painful to build and maintain though. It's important to note that when you get a Mayako kit, you're given access to basically a build guide along with the regular manual. The build guide is mainly tailored for a nitro car, but it will apply to the e-buggy as well. It goes over some things that could be addressed to make the build easier and make the car last longer. There's also some things noted in the build guide that aren't good with the kit, like the fact that the holes for the arms need to be reamed sometimes, the shock shafts are a bit soft, and the turnbuckles can be a bit brittle. Now, I can't really confirm or deny the durability of the shock shafts or turnbuckles myself, as I have yet to break any. What I can say is that my particular car's arms didn't really need reaming. They were pretty smooth from the get-go and were pretty much broken in over the course of 1 or 2 runs. On that note of fit and finish, the Mayako MX8e is probably the best fitting buggy I've ever built, especially in the shock departments. The shocks were perfectly smooth, the suspension was very free in movement, and everything else fit together with any need for Dremel or sandpaper. Overall, the build itself, where difficult, wasn't frustrating, and I can say that a more experienced builder can put together very easily within a few hours. It took me about 8.5 total. If you're more of a beginner and less experienced in building kits, then the Mayako may be harder to recommend, even with the resources given to drivers. Looking at the complete car, one would be given the impression that the car looks like an HB E819 or world spec car, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong in terms of its looks. They both have top-linked chassis braces, both have similar electronics layouts, and both are gold. However, this is kind of where the similarities end, as the Mayako is both easier to maintain than the HB and has more OEM tuning options than the HB as well. In fact, the Mayako probably has more OEM tuning options than any other car currently on the market. Things like 3-piece rear hubs, adjustable KPI, diff height adjustments, sway bar placement in the rear, and a few other things I'm probably forgetting. However, the current version I have is the US regional kit that comes with medium grip parts like normal rear hubs, 2.3 and 2.5 sway bars front and rear, brown springs, upper links instead of arms, and KPI 1 and caster 1 options. You see, the design philosophy of the MX8e and by extension the MX8 Nitro buggy for non-members is to be as easy as possible to drive and tune. Some features of this particular car that are supposed to make it easier to drive and tune include, but not limited to, a large center diff cup to smooth out power delivery, the CVDs in the front to create more mechanical bind in the front, creating more front grip, universals in the rear to aid in bump negotiation and once again smooth out power delivery, and the car itself just being very wide in order to aid overall stability. Next up, we have the overall maintenance and how easy or difficult it is to work on. For me, and my own sanity, the MX8e is actually pretty easy to work on once it's fully built. There's not a whole lot in the way of doing certain regular maintenance items that you normally do every few runs. Compared to say a Kyosho or an HB, the Mayako is easier to work on in terms of getting to the diffs, especially the center diff, replacing shock towers and wing mounts, routing your wires, and other small things you normally do to your car. In terms of other C-Hub buggies I've personally worked on, the Mayako is probably the second or third easiest to do maintenance on, beaten out by the Techno EB48 2.2 and kinda by the Sparco F8e in very select circumstances. Once again though, this is sort of nullified by the resources given to you once you actually scan that funny little QR code on your chassis. Now, there is an issue I personally have with the Mayako MX8e, the issue of the receiver box, or lack of one directly out of the box. The receiver is the most fragile part of your car. This is why when mounting your receiver to the car, in almost all cases, especially in 8th scale where the cars are usually outdoors in a dusty or demanding track, the receiver is put in a safe receiver box to protect it from the elements and shock from large jumps. The only 2 e-buggies I know of that don't have a receiver box out of the box are the X-Ray XB8 and this, the Mayako MX8e. In this case, it's a lot less of a problem because ringing up a Mayako distributor and asking for a receiver box, 3D printed or otherwise, is a lot easier than asking from someone from X-Ray to do the same thing. And you are able to use different receiver boxes from other brands like Kyosho, but it's still a negative in my book, as out of the box, depending on where you buy it, the MX8e will not include as a receiver box. Now it's time to talk about how this thing actually drives. Now, I was going to describe how the MX8e drives compared to other buggies on the market as a metaphor, but to be honest, I've never really had a buggy feel like how the MX8 feels. All of those features I mentioned before in the build section that are there to make the car easy to drive all work intended to make the car really easy to drive. The car feels very planted and has very little in the way of slip. As long as you've got the tires for your car correct in that particular track, very rarely will your car step out on you unexpectedly in the rear. In the air, once again, it's very easy to control. So easy that I got a bit whip happy for the first time in 8-scale racing and, well, RC racing in general. The MX8e also carries a lot of corner speed when you want it to. You can really push the car in long sweepers and other circuit style features that you'll really gain a lot of time on other buggies on the track. If you plan out your lines and drive in a way that's very smooth, you'll do well with the MX8e. Where the MX8e really struggles though is with the 180s and more motocross style tracks. When the MX8 has grip, it really doesn't want to rotate the rear end as compared to say a Techno or most pillowball cars. You lose out in those sections. Also, if you have a very aggressive and brutal driving style, unless you really change a lot from box stock, the MX8e may not respond well to that sort of driving style. However, this is with base KPI settings. I've yet to try KPI 0.5 or 0, which are supposed to help with the initial turn-in and make rotation easier. Now, let's talk about durability. I personally have yet to break anything on the car, save for an arm stiffener. However, like I said before, by Mayako drivers' own admissions, the shock shafts are soft and the turnbuckles are more brittle than others. So, if you were to stock any spare parts for yourself, I'd stock up on the usual breakage suspects and those two parts as well. As for part support, Mayako is in a similar position to a Gamma, but slightly better. The only way to get most parts for the Mayako platform is to order it directly from the Mayako website, which could take 2 to 3 days to arrive, or you can ring up a parts center on Discord or Facebook in order to get it directly from them. The latter is usually preferred as the time it takes to get it to you will probably be less than if you were to order straight from the website. If you can't find a part on the actual Mayako website, chances are a service center will have one in stock. This is how I acquired an extra body to paint. Last time I checked in the Mayako US store, they had all the wear parts like stock arms and bushings and other things like that in stock. That being said, you can also find some MX8 parts on AMain as well. Now, how does the car stack up against the competition? The MX8e, like I mentioned before, is a C-Hub car, of which there are a few out there. The Gamma N1e and the Kyosho MP10e are different enough through their overall design to where I don't think there's too much to compare. The three cars that I think the Mayako really has to contend with would be the HB E8 World Edition, the Tekno EB48 2.2, and crucially, the Sparco F8e. To be honest, I don't really think the E8 World Edition is much of a factor due to financial woes from HB and more importantly their prices for spare parts. $100 for a set of C-Hubs really hurts, so that leaves us with the Tekno and the Sparco. Now here's the thing. Recommending the Mayako over the Tekno would be disingenuous for most drivers in the United States. The EB48 2.2 is better suited for more tracks that you'd encounter in the United States and is more forgiving in terms of durability and part support. Not only that, but the Tekno is designed from the ground up to be easy to work on and durable as possible, whereas the Mayako were easy to work on compared to, say, a Kyosho or an HB, still isn't as easy as a Tekno. Also, since I genuinely believe that the Teknos are the most popular brand in the United States, you'll find support in terms of setup for pretty much anything you'll encounter here in the US. Whether or not you choose the Mayako over the Tekno depends entirely how much you value the level of help you'll get from buying a Mayako that I mentioned in the previous video, and the $100 or so you'd save for spares or tires should you decide on the Mayako in the first place. However, the main rival for the Mayako brand as a whole would have to be Sparco. On closer inspection, both the F8e and MX8e appear to be very similar in a lot of ways. Both are highly customizable cars in terms of their geometry, both are around the $600 and $630 price range, both can run upper arm or upper link setups, and both are relatively new brands to the RC world. The F8e is a bit more versatile in terms of possible battery layouts, which when it comes to saving money when switching platforms can be very important for some. Support for the Sparko in my area is kinda skewed considering their team manager, John Blaze, currently lives in Georgia and frequents a lot of tracks here. Outside the immediate east coast of the US though, on the west coast of the US, Europe, and Southeast Pacific area, it doesn't seem like Sparko has the same cross-regional connection that Mayako does, at least on surface level. This is where the Mayako has the advantage over the Sparko in my opinion, and that there is a place where Mayako drivers all share their knowledge and experiences in the Discord server and just in general as a community, and more direct discussion with different people who develop the actual car. What I mean to say is that given the resources you'll have with the Mayako, not including the membership which I'll get to in a later video, you'll supposedly learn more as a driver and tuner should you decide to go that route. This leads me to the main conclusion of this video. Do I think the MX8e is worth your time? Yes. Yes I do. It drives very easily, it's durable enough where it counts, and the background support you'll get along with the buggy itself will be unmatched. If you're looking at buying a new HB or possibly even a Kyosho, this would be in my opinion the superior alternative. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more videos like it, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to let me know what you thought of the video and your opinions on Mayako in the comment section below. Also, if you'd like to support this channel and me financially, you can subscribe to my Patreon where I post updates and teasers to my next videos. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my active patrons Michael Williams, IRC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dave Armstrong, Rob Bedingfield, Caden Merks, Ian Petrie, Jeffrey Coons, James D. Anderson, Shane T. Ruth, Gable Barber, and especially Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.